Welcome back to The Health Perspective. In the first part of this conversation, Danielle Lauren shared her personal experience of mental health struggles around the birth of her son, including the challenge of recognising what was happening and the reality of trying to access help. In this second episode, we shift the focus to the wider pressures that many new parents face. We talk about comparison, unrealistic expectations, and the cultural narratives that make so many people feel like they're falling short. Danielle is also going to share how she's tried to respond to those pressures in a practical way by creating a set of support cards for new mums based on what she'd wished she'd heard at the time. I'm absolutely certain it's going to be another thoughtful and honest discussion about what makes this stage of life so difficult for so many and the steps that we can take to make it more manageable. Danielle, welcome back.
Thanks. This is exciting.
Tell me about the cards. So we've got them here. So they're the Way Too Honest support cards for new mums.
Yeah, because I feel like there are people who are honest and then there are people who are way too honest.
What's the difference between the two?
The difference is if you say to someone, how you doing? You're like, oh, I'm doing okay. That's like being honest.
Yeah.
Like being way too honest is like going, oh, well, let me tell you really what's going on. I think being way too honest may be saying a little bit more than people expect you to say, but is still authentic and true to you.
And where did the idea for these cards come from?
I struggled with my mental health, and a lot of things that I experienced in motherhood came as a surprise. Like I kept finding myself going, why did nobody tell me this? Why this thing that I'm having seems universal, but nobody's speaking about it. And I thought I wanted to write a book, and I started writing a book. And then I was like, mums don't have time to read a book. Where are you finding this magical time to read a book? And in my first year of motherhood, I wrote down all the words I wish someone had said to me. Like if I had an experience with somebody, or I would hear something, or I would internally have my own kind of dialogue, I just kept copious notes. And in this book that I was writing, I would have these quotation pages, and I kept getting drawn to the quotes. And I was like, actually, I don't need an entire chapter to explain this quote. The quote says it all. You kind of get it. And so I love the idea that there are these cards that cover a range of different emotions and experiences that a new mom has, but you can get through the entire box in 10 minutes versus a book. And the great thing about having cards is you can find the ones that resonate with you, and you can keep them in your purse or your nappy bag or put them on the wall. And they're kind of like these mantras, these like words of guidance and support. And yeah, I never in my life thought I'd be making a box of cards. But I think as a storyteller, you don't always choose the medium or the platform. You know, some things are meant to be a tweet, some things are meant to be a video, some things are meant to be a poem. And these just said to me, we need to be a pack of cards. And that's how they ended up here.
Fantastic. And you did all the design work and everything yourself, didn't you? So this is all your own work.
Absolutely. Everything that you see in there, I wrote, I designed, I edited, including box design. Like I watched YouTube tutorials on how to do it. There's probably a much better way to do it than how I did.
I don't think so. I mean, they look fantastic. 64 unfiltered cards delivering love, humour and solidarity to a new mother. And there's a caveat, swearing included.
That's right. I sometimes think that I think swearing is a very powerful way to get a point across. And I think also having swearing in it just kind of already breaks the maternal mythology, because no one thinks of a swearing mom. Like even that in of itself is like, I think it was setting the tone very quickly about what this box is. But also because I wanted to be inclusive, I've also created a box without swearing, because I know there are people who are maybe a bit more conservative or religious who could still benefit from it, but may not appreciating having the F word kind of in their house.
Okay. Maybe we should add a caveat that they'll be swearing during this video.
Yes, definitely.
So, I mean, let's go through. I mean, what we decided before we started filming now was that we would choose, I think, the cards that resonated with us most and kind of use them as a little bit of a discussion point for some of the biggest challenges we see nowadays, both as a mum and as a GP. So I'm gonna let you go first. So you can hold your card up to the camera, and I'm going to put these back on the side, and you tell me what you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
So this is one of my favorite cards, and it seems to resonate with a lot of people. And it says, everyone has an opinion about how you should raise your baby. They can all fuck off. Because everyone does.
Yeah.
Everyone, from the moment people find out you're pregnant, everyone has their opinion about what you should do, how you should be, how you should act, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what the best advice is. No one is short of having an opinion, and frankly, they can fuck off because you're having to do it, you're having to experience it, and also, you know, as a parent, you have your own internal wisdom. And so I really want it. This is like a card of protection, which basically says, you can all stay over there. I'm just gonna look after myself over here.
We don't rate that internal wisdom enough anymore. And I think the proliferation of self-help resources for parents has contributed to that. You know, I know when we had our kids, the number of books and routine books and routine options and feeding books, and the number of options are so significant, and everyone recommends something different. And I think that in a way tunnels away at the internal wisdom. I often say as a GP, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, and it's actually there's not that much wrong you can do with a baby, as long as you're kind of keeping them fed, giving them some sleep, handling them carefully, you know, and looking out for the red flags. Actually, a lot of it does kind of come naturally, or you don't have to question yourself so much as you think that you do. But I think that those opinions, like you're saying, actually erode at that sense of confidence that we have, that we know what we're doing.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's so much contradictory information, and depending who you choose as your maternal guru will say one thing and then someone will say the other. And someone actually said to me, when someone shares their opinion, they're actually looking for validation for their opinion.
Yeah.
If they're saying, oh, you should do this, they want you to go, okay, because it somehow justifies their decision. And I think being able to kind of separate that, I think is really important. But I also think as a new mother, and I don't know what other people's experiences are, but I felt that there was always like, if you don't do it like this, your child's going to die. If you don't, you know, if you sleep with, if they're sleeping on their stomach or sleeping on their back, if you fall asleep with them, if you don't swaddle them, if the temperature's the wrong thing, if you put that cream on them instead of this, like every message, like, and then you'll die. Like, it's very extreme. And so because everyone's wanting to make sure that the child is protected, and they should be protected, they do share every possible worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And it does cause you a bit of anxiety, because you're like, you never want to harm your child. So therefore you take the expert advice of whoever you decide that expert to be.
But most of the expert advice that you really need, so things about cot death prevention, come, you know, from the official channels, I guess, as you go through them. So, you know, your midwife visits and before you're discharged from hospital, you should be receiving most of the major messaging about things that you need to look out for.
Yeah, and I mean, be interesting to like hear from you, because they probably are. You know, it was really nice hearing you speak about, you know, are they fed? Are they, like, what are kind of the foundational things, and then everything else you kind of work out as you go. And I think that it's a much more settling way to parent. If you're like, okay, is my child comfortable? Are they eating? Are they sleeping? Are we seeing it? Okay, cool. I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the other thing that is not counted in these different, in these kind of, I guess what we're talking about is people are very black and white and very polarized. And what that discounts is that every baby is different. And so you've got books which are saying 7 a.m, wake your baby, feed your baby for 20 minutes, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But and that might work for some, but it doesn't count for the fact that not every baby and every mum is the same, and that routine might put a huge amount of pressure on someone, and for someone else it might work really well. So I'm very against the kind of black and white. It's this way or the highway. And I think your point about people looking for validation is so astute. It's so there, because I'd never really thought of it that way. But you're right. It's kind of people looking, you know, not in an evil way, but they're kind of looking for confirmation that they've done it right, or that you find their point of view validating. You find the way that they did it helpful, and you're going to validate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not even just that every baby's different. Every parent is different too. You know, some people, like some mothers or fathers, need to have routines. Some need to be a bit more relaxed. I think it also depends on your support systems. I think it depends on your socioeconomic background. I think it depends on your culture.
Absolutely.
So I think it's, you know, it's noticing that every family unit, whatever that is, needs to be met in its own way. And that making sure that the mental health of the parents is okay to be able to raise the child, like, you know, having out. So I think it's about being able to internally also look at what works for you as a family in your circumstance and meet people there, as opposed to, sometimes looking to external people who, maybe have their own staff, or, have money, or have family, or have whatever, or need to have that structure for their mental health, but not necessarily be like, that is the golden rule.
And I guess the one of the cards I've chosen here is pretty similar. It says, "Thank you, random stranger, for the unsolicited, unhelpful, useless piece of advice I never asked for." And then in brackets at the bottom, I'm just going to smile and nod. Does that bring up anything else for you, or is it kind of all along the same theme? Is that a personal one?
I mean, I don't know what happens when you are pregnant and you become a mother, but you become public property. Every single person thinks they can now come up to you and talk to you. And It would happen, or I'd be on the bus and like random person next to me would start to like tell me what they think I should be doing, or I'd be in the coffee shop and the person behind me, or like going back to this idea of everyone would have an opinion, and I would just have to sit there because I just like smile and go, thank you so much, random person I'm never ever going to see. But there's that constant frustration that, like, forget that you're getting it from your close friends and family, you're getting it from random people who just, I don't know where that comes from culturally, that people just want to vomit their feelings onto you. But it's pretty exhausting, and you're you're in a pretty vulnerable position when you're there with your baby and have like people just impose.
Do you use this like a yellow card? Just in football, just hold it up to people. I thought it's yellow on the back actually. So.
It's just it's I think I don't I have a lot of internal dialogue, and so maybe a dangerous woman is one who just looks at you and smiles, but whatever's going on in her head can be really really okay, cool, really really dangerous. I've imagined a lot of things I would like to say to people when they make comments about what I should be doing to raise my child, but you pick your battles. But I guess this was my revenge. This was my revenge.
You've put it out here.
But I think what's so interesting about these cards is every mother relates to that. Like when people have given me feedback about the cards or seen them, they're like, that's one of the cards that people go, oh my God, yes, why do so many people come up and tell me their things? And so I think there's a universal truth to that. I don't know where that comes from.
I mean, as a doctor, but as a father, I related to a lot of these cards as well. They're not, they're not just for mums. I think that the themes are the same.
Do you as a dad get the same? Did you find like you would be out in the park with your kids and someone would come and impose their position on how you should father, or what you should be doing to be a better dad?
Yes, in the newborn phase, but I don't think it's the same as for mums.
Yeah. What goes on in your mental, like what was your internal dialogue when that was happening?
I think it's different each time. And I guess if I think about my wife, I think with the first child, you're trying to take it all in because you believe that you need to. By the time you get to your third child, it just washes over you, and certainly, I've got 3 children. That's definitely the case. But with the first, you don't, the first time you do it, you don't really know what you need to filter and what you don't need to filter. And most people who bring you this advice are friends or acquaintances, and they are generally well-meaning. So you try and amalgamate it all, but I think it adds to stress levels ultimately. But like I said, when you get to the third and you realize you know what you're doing, it just kind of like passes over you like a gentle wave.
Yeah. I think, and what you're saying actually is also very powerful, because I do think when you are a new parent, you really are learning on the job and you don't know. And when people who seem wiser or more experienced share something with you, you do feel like you want to absorb it all because they must know, because they've done it. But eventually, whether it's through, turning up your own internal wisdom or starting to kind of question that
I'm very careful now I'm very careful, less as a doctor, but as a parent, to try to not give advice unless I'm asked for it by new parents. If someone texts me or messages me or reaches out and says, we're having real problems with sleep, and actually I had a friend do this with me a few months ago, we're having real problems with sleep, what do you recommend? Then I will tentatively start to say, well, there are lots of ways you could look at it. This is what worked for us, may not work for you. But I think I'm tried less to offer the unsolicited advice, because I think that's a better way. I think when someone reaches out, then they are looking for that advice. Tell me about the next card you've chosen.
I have a card. It's I'll point it to the camera. but actually it has two sides. It says, ask me what I did today, I dare you. And it lists a bunch of things. I'm going to read them. But then it also goes into the other side.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like feeding, caring, washing, loving, fixing, studying, attuning, sanitizing, bathing, Googling, entertaining, helping, pacifying, shopping, healing, designing, wrestling, negotiating, navigating, acting. I'm not going to go on because this will take up your whole podcast time. But I would find someone would, it'd be like 6 o'clock and someone's like, oh, what did you do today? And in my head, I was like, I don't know. I didn't do anything, but I was so busy and I wanted to kind of quantify it. And I think for also the sense of humor where you're like, oh, wow, that's an extensive list. Oh, it goes on. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's also, I think some people sometimes passive aggressively put this next to their partner's bed just as like a signaler. But I think there's so many things that you're doing, invisible work that is happening that you're not quantifying and it's not being measured. And I think one of the challenges, when you go to your job, there are people there going, you've done a good job, or you get paid your salary, so you feel a sense of accomplishment or productivity. But I think as a parent and as a mother, you're not seeing all the micro actions, and no one is giving you any feedback like, well done for doing that, for picking up that, for recognizing that, for Googling that, for turning up that. And so you're constantly busy doing things, but there's no mechanism in which you can kind of
it's also never ending. I think it's like the laundry, as soon as it's done, it's never done, is it? Yeah. And like sterilizing the bottles and preparing the weaning food, it's never done. There's no end point. Like at work, most of us are used to kind of projects or periods of time where, I have clinics that at the end of the clinic is done, and then maybe there's a to-do list or maybe there's a project. But I think with parenting, there is no done, is there? It's just a rolling thing. And I think that we can fail to congratulate ourselves on a job. It's very rare that someone will sit back at the end of the day and say to themselves, you did good today. You did really, really well. You got all of this done, because we're more likely to just stress about the fact that we have to wake up and repeat it all tomorrow.
Absolutely. And I think on top of that, there's things that you can measure and things that you can't. So if you have sterilized the bottles, at least you can see the clean bottles. If you have done the washing, you can see it. But no one's taking into account anticipation, like sitting there observing your child, trying to guess their needs, trying to, being present with them, trying to pick up cues, like all the invisible stuff. No one can see the like ninja work that you're doing as a parent that actually is taking up a lot of your mental and physical energy, because you're thinking about stuff, you're planning stuff, etc. So I think being able to actually acknowledge that those are actions, and again, you might just see a mother just sitting there quietly, but actually, and a father sitting there, but actually all the work that's happening, and kind of putting that out and acknowledging that, even just anticipation, being present, listening, etc., are actions and very powerful, and actually recognizing that.
Just spending quality time with your baby, just like lying down and playing with them when they're on the mat on the floor. It's not people. I think we are very guilty nowadays of considering that wasted time. That kind of action, or just kind of being present and sitting there and bonding and relaxing and cuddling, and those things, I think our brains are much more geared to feel nowadays like we're wasting time when we do those. So yeah, I would include that in the description.
Yeah, I think something that really has taken me and continues to take me a while to kind of realize is how much we live in a society of productivity.
Yeah.
Like we really, really value productivity, and society has a very clear idea of what being productive is.
Yeah.
And I am so surprised how much it's imposed on us. So being productive is going to work. Being productive is doing the laundry. Being productive is like, we have so much of a productivity mindset that your only validation as a human is how productive you are with your time. Where actually, one, changing what the definition of productive is, and also trying to release ourselves from that pressure of what it is to be productive. Like for me, it feels like a very Western society commercial. This is who you have to be. If you're not this, then you're not as relevant. And you hear that with the conversations about women returning back to work. It's like, well, you go, are you ready to be a productive member of society? And it's like, well, actually, being present, being calm, being nice, working, that is productive. And again, I think maybe we need to come up with a new word that's more powerful than whether it's being presence or etc. But I think something that confronted me so much about becoming a mother was this like, okay, you've been mothering now, but when are you going to go be productive?
Yeah.
When are you going to go be
It's the subtext, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it exists there, and I wasn't aware of how much my validation in the world was so much met with my productivity.
Yeah.
And it's taken me and continues to take me a long time to go, actually, I still matter and I'm still valid, even if I'm not fulfilling a mandate of what it is to be acceptable and productive by Western society's, standards.
I'm going to go take one of the cards that I've picked, and it's this one. It's you need a snack, which is so simple, but to me speaks about self-care as a parent. And it reminds me of a story that I once as a GP saw a couple with a new baby who'd had a few complications, and so it wasn't the easiest time for them, and the baby was a few weeks old, and the mum looked so poorly during this appointment and just looked so exhausted that I checked her blood sugar, and she was hypoglycemic. So actually, like, her blood sugar was so low, and I was like, when have you last eaten? And she was just like, I don't remember. I think, I was up at midnight, and I was like, your blood sugar is actually low. Like, your body is not coping with the amount of stress that it's under at the moment. And for me, that card is such a simple kind of reminder. Yes, it's about snacks, but for me, it's more about self-care. And I often say in these situations, and I use this analogy with mental health and with parenting, that if you're in a plane with your kid and the plane is kind of going down, you need to put your own oxygen mask on before you put your kid's oxygen mask on. Otherwise, you're both going to die in a horrible plane crash. But I think we forget that in the kind of day-to-day. And if you are not looking after yourself as a new parent, and by looking after yourself, I don't mean exercising for 2 hours and meditating for 3 hours and going to the cinema. I mean doing the basics, looking after your basic needs: sleep, food, kind of getting fresh air, getting daylight, socializing. If you're not looking after those basic needs, you're setting yourself up it's a recipe for problems.
Yeah, I think one of the things that mums experience, at least I can speak from my experience, is that kind of conflict, because I think there is this feeling of needing to be self-sacrificing, because that mum was making sure that her baby was being fed, and there's this thing of like, my job is to look after my child, not to look after myself. And I don't know whether it's guilt or feeling, or whether it's a feeling of like accomplishment or a mandate. Like, it is important, but I think a lot of mothers struggle with it. So how do you, because I think a lot of us have heard that analogy, put on your oxygen mask, but actually I don't, thinking about even my friendship circle, I don't think many of us do that. Like, how do we change our mindset around that? Because I think you do sometimes, you do know what you could be doing to kind of self-care, but you're like, oh, but I need to prioritize and make sure those bottles are washed, or I need to, like, it is important, but you've only got a finite amount of time. And I, as a mother, I've definitely felt like, but my kid comes first.
So I think there's two ways that I do that. And I think the first way is being really direct about it, and kind of saying in certain situations, like in that one, being very clear that actually you're putting your baby's health at risk. As in, the way you're thinking about this, I understand the way you're thinking about it, but it's not right. And we need to think about actually your long-term health and your baby's health as well, because you can't be walking around with a blood sugar that low. Like, you're exhausted. You can't function at all. So I think the first way is being really direct about it. I think the second way is helping give people strategies that are actually realistic. So, for this mum, it wasn't about, well, we need to make sure you're going out to get a pizza once a day with your husband for an hour, and then you need to make some, like, a nice home-cooked dinner in the evening. It was just about saying, well, let's have a think about, where do you feed? Like, why don't you put a little pouch on the side of the chair and drop a whole load of granola bars in there and drop a whole load of other stuff in there. And you make sure whenever you sit down to feed, you eat 2 of those things. And let's have a think about what food you could have if you get a 10-minute break, porridge, oats with a little bit of honey in. Yogurt that's full of protein, long-acting sugars that are going to really see you through the day. So if you get 10 minutes, that's what I want you to make yourself. So it's more about realism. Because I think, unfortunately, with social media and stuff, we're kind of polluted with this idea of, like, self-care equals X, and we get these pictures of mums with these kind of beautiful salads and but it's just not like that, especially in the first few weeks and months. So for me, it's about giving people strategies and helping people think, as a slight, it's okay to eat a small bag of dairy milk of chocolate at 2 a.m, because you just need that kind of sugar hit just to kind of keep going. But also, like, how can we make sure you have a healthy meal during the day as well? What simple strategies? And luckily we live in an age where actually you can order things pretty quickly to your house and so on. I don't know if you relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I really like about what you're saying is you're offering very realistic, practical things that you can do, because I do think as a mum, you do get the message like, oh, you should take care of yourself or sleep when the baby sleeps. Like, I think we do hear these messages of taking care of ourselves, but I do think that the version is, by somehow, I don't know, going to get your nails done or getting your hair as opposed to, for me, it's so funny when you talk about the snack. One of my proudest moments was when you go to the cinema, like there's a little snack bar. When I was breastfeeding, I almost created my own little mini snack bar. So I had my pretzels and my popcorn and my dried fruit and my nuts, etc. So it actually became kind of pleasurable, and I made it look really cute and really.
Why shouldn't it be? Like, why shouldn't you have something to look forward to in a day which can be filled with lots of challenges?
Yeah, but I think that idea of being able to come up with practical small things of what self, and I think a lot of the beginning of motherhood is redefining those things like self-care or what rest looks like, because you're not going to be able to do necessarily what you were able to do. So I like how you even just talked about having 10 minutes or having those snacks there, like because I think having practical solutions of self-care that fit into that infrastructure of the chaos of those, of early parenthood is really important.
Okay. What's the next card you've got?
So I have this one.
Yeah, this is my favorite. This is my favorite one.
It's a baby vortex. So there's a baby vortex, and then you see time just like going into the baby vortex. Because this was so my reality. I'm going to share my thoughts about why I like this one, but you said it's your favorite, and I want to know why you think it's your favorite.
I don't think I need to explain it. I mean, I think it just speaks for itself. I stared at it when I first saw it for a good 10 minutes, just thinking, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, babies are little time magnets. They're just like it's insane. The time space continuum does not make sense when you have a child. And I just remember when in motherhood, time just did not make sense, and that everything just takes longer and time just disappears. It's kind of like when you're on an airplane. You never quite know how long you're on the flight for. It's the same with being a parent. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in a baby vortex. Like, this is what it is. And time's being sucked in. I love designing this card because I just felt like it expressed such a key moment of the parental journey that no one really talks about enough.
Yeah. I completely agree. I don't think we need to elaborate on it more. I just like I said, you could just look at that one all day as a parent.
For sure.
I'm gonna do one here. Sleep deprivation is so torturous, it is banned as a weapon of war. Don't you dare underestimate what you're having to endure. So tell me about this one.
I think before the baby is born, people are like, make sure you get enough sleep now, because, or I remember being out with my baby and people would like, how's sleep going? And people would joke about it. Like it's, like there's this trope of, oh, well, you don't get to sleep. But actually that is a huge physiological change that someone is dealing with. I mean, we know how important sleep is, and it's being disrupted a lot. I mean, when you, again, something that I don't think I understood as a parent, besides your baby waking up, I was, for me in the beginning, I was breastfeeding and I was pumping. So I'd have to, I'd have to every 3 hours. So that means I've only got 2.5 hour breaks between when I need to be up, like that, and that's not just happening for a day where I again get to have a sleep in the following day. That's happening weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And that sleep debt is just so bad that the UN has recognized that it's torturous. And yet this is what parents have to go through. I mean, as a medical professional, like I would love to hear your thoughts on what, on your thoughts about sleep and sleep debt and sleep deprivation.
I mean, you're right. and it's really challenging for new parents, I think, because it's one of the most polarizing aspects. We talked before about the advice and the unsolicited advice, and actually I think on sleep is probably one of the most polarizing parts of it. And I tend to approach parents, patients, or even friends who are asking for advice with a lot of caution in this regard, and very much emphasizing the fact that every baby is different, every experience is different, and really, really not to trust most things you hear about baby sleep. If anyone is telling you their baby is sleeping through like a darling at 6 weeks, I'm like, I take that with a huge pinch of salt. If you're reading any baby manuals which say that the baby should be sleeping through by week 10, if not, there's a problem, huge pinch of salt with that as well. It is incredibly difficult. I mean, you've spoken to me before about various strategies, but I think ultimately in the first couple of months, it really is just about doing whatever you can, grabbing whatever you can, grabbing the sleep you can, sharing responsibilities if you're lucky enough to be parenting with someone as well. And then over time, making sure you don't develop bad habits with the baby's sleep. But that really is over months rather than weeks, as the baby becomes more able to kind of go through the night. But, we're talking way, way later in the process. So, yeah, I'm very careful to just say to people to remove all kind of ideals and kind of ideas, but also reassure people that it won't be like this forever. I think often people need to hear that when you've been doing it for 6 weeks and you are so sleep deprived. And it just feels like it's never going to end. I think just someone saying to you, you know what, I can pretty much guarantee you that you will reach a point, whether it's at 4 months, whether it's at 7 months, where you will get a reasonable amount of sleep again. It's not going to be how it was before necessarily, but it will be reasonable.
Yeah, I also think that one of the greatest lessons you learn as a parent is nothing is permanent.
Yes.
Because you may have your child that's sleeping an insane amount at week 6, but they're not going to be doing that at week 8.
Absolutely.
Or they're not, or 2 years, or like, I think as soon as you get to know your child, they'll change and they'll shift. And suddenly you're dealing with a person who's got new habits or new preferences or new, and I think part of it is just kind of learning to roll with the punches, and what worked yesterday may not work today. And also, I don't know why. I mean, congratulations to all those parents who are having perfect nights of sleep, and I'm happy for them. But I think I don't know why we need to share how idyllic and wonderful our lives is. We know most people are probably struggling a lot, but nothing is permanent in life. And with parenting and a child, you're not getting the same. There's no consistency. And again, it's also about working out what's good for you and your family. People have lots and lots. Again, we've spoken about social media gurus, and there are sleep consultants and books, etc. Because sleep, sleep is a very emotional, sometimes very weaponized topic, and people have very, very strong thoughts about it. But again, depends on your circumstance, depends on what your parenting style is like, depends on your socioeconomic, depends on your, on your lifestyle, your mental health, and finding what works for you and your family. And I think so much of this is about finding your own wisdom and finding your own rhythm and actually owning that in a way unapologetically.
Yeah. I completely agree. I want to end on one point, which was the best bit of advice I was ever given, which was, I think I called one of my best friends about maybe 12 weeks or kind of 3 to 4 months into having our first kid. And I was saying, it's a bit of a rough, he was asking me how I was. I said, it's a rough time at the moment, he's teething, so he's up in the night, but next week we'll be back to normal. And and he said to me, there is no status quo, as in you got to just accept, as soon as the teething's over, there'll be like a cough or cold. And as soon as that's over, there'll be like a weaning. And as soon as that's over, there'll be something else. But he wasn't saying it in a hopeless way. He was more saying it to say, once you accept that there is no kind of status quo and stuff is constantly changing, you actually do end up happier. And I completely, looking back, having now done it 3 times as a parent, I think that was the best bit of advice I was ever given.
It's great advice. I love it.
Good. Danielle, thank you so much for coming back and joining me again. Where can people find your support cards?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's waytoohonest.co,
Okay.
not .com. Hopefully it's on the screen at the bottom.
It will be.
Excellent. Yeah, and people can buy them. It's a really great gift. And we deal with lots and lots of different topics, funny ones, serious ones.
Yeah.
And it's a bestie in a box that I hope will make the lives of mothers easier, better, and greater.
Well, having looked through all of them, I can honestly say I think it will.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll make sure we put those links on for you.
Thank you.